Hello and welcome to the Franchise Tag podcast. Not with me, your host, Freddie Hall, but he's not here. He's taken a well-earned bit of time off, but nevertheless, me and Adam are here to go through everything NFL, talk about what's happened, what's coming up. Only real big news we've got for this week, breaking news, we already knew. Jason Garrett's been fired from the New York Giants, and future Hall of Famer Adrian Peterson has been released by the Titans.
But how are you feeling as a Giants fan? How are you feeling now that Jason Garrett has finally gone?
I mean, if anybody has watched the previous shows, they'll know that this is something that I thought needed to happen after about week 2. Was it week 3? I said
Yeah,
I
I think
addressed this as the problem. So fingers crossed, I was right, and it does help. But I think there's maybe more to it than just Jason Garrett. But yeah, I think that's a step in the right direction, and we'll talk a bit more later about the New York Giants because I'm sure they're going to come up with our conversation. So this week, I really wanted to go through all the teams that are less than 500 and see what the future is for the head coaches and the teams, really. And I know you wanted to kick it off with us because you wanted to talk about your favorite team, the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, so my main thing that I was going to talk about this week was the Bears and Matt Nagy, and just we had planned to do this show on Monday, and I feel like a little bit has moved on since then. But I still think it kind of needs talking about. There are rumors going around that the players are not happy with him. There's rumors that he's going to get fired after the Lions game tomorrow. Whether he's denied that and said that he hasn't spoken to anybody about that. So, who knows? But they're not going to come out and go, "Oh, we're going to fire you, but we want you to coach the team tomorrow to win." So, who knows? I suppose really it's a difficult one because as a Green Bay fan, a big fan of Matt Nagy, think he should stay there for as long as they want. It's brilliant, but it hasn't worked with him at all, really. I mean, that very first season that he was there, he did really well. They went 12-4, won the NFC North, and it's kind of just fallen away since then, and it's just got worse and worse. And when you actually look at his record, it's 31-27, so it actually looks decent. But when you actually look into it, like I said, 12-4 that first season looked really good. Then he went 8-8, and then 8-8 again. And so far this year, he's 3-7. Now, I know that we had kind of thought there's going to be growing pains with Justin Fields. It wasn't something that was going to happen straight away, and it wasn't going to be great. But the fact of the matter is it's looked pretty bad, and it's been very defensive. And I know that Nagy has always been a bit of a defensive coach, but it's just not great, and it kind of makes you feel like, are they wasting their potential future with Justin Fields? I mean, it's like I know it's only his first season, he's going to get better, but you want someone there who's going to help bring him along, and it doesn't feel like Nagy's the guy who's doing it, and that's a big problem for them. When you actually look at who they've got left to play from a Bears standpoint rather than Nagy, you've got, the Lions at home, the Packers at home, Seahawks and Vikings, and then the Cardinals, Vikings and Giants away. Now, you would hope that they would beat the Lions at home because pretty much everyone does, apart from the Steelers, obviously. And maybe you could argue that because it's near the end of the season and the Giants potentially could be out of everything as well, that maybe they could win that game. But the rest of them look like potentially tough games against teams that are going to be trying to get into the playoffs. I mean, I know the Seahawks, maybe you could argue, maybe not. But even still, if you've got two teams that aren't in the playoffs, you'd still think that the Seahawks would probably come out of it on top with players like Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf there. So it doesn't look like it's going to get much better. They've also only scored 163 points throughout the whole season, so they're only averaging 16.3 points a game. I mean, that's not great for any NFL team, and you're not going to win games that way. So I do feel that probably the time is right to move on from Nagy, and that they need to bring in kind of new blood with the coaching staff to go along with the new quarterback. And I feel that that's probably what they need to do. So yeah, I mean, there's one team that really needs changes, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought we'd be having this conversation when he first joined
No.
the Bears, and he sort of went off like fire, and everyone was saying, you know, that's the new future of coaching. You know, he's going to be one of the guys that he was spoke about for Coach of the Year, wasn't he? And
Yeah.
yeah, it just hasn't seemed to have translated going forwards. Everyone thought they'd be Super Bowl contenders the following year when they went 8-8, but they are increasingly, when you've been a franchise for and had 3 solid seasons and you started off well, there's got to be progression, not deterioration.
Yeah.
And the offense especially has deteriorated massively over the last 2 years. And it's been carried by that defense, that ever-aging defense. It's got some superstars, but you know, they're the main core of that are getting old now. And I think he's just wasted his time there that he could have actually made a difference. And I don't think that is the way to move forward with the franchise. Like you said, I think Justin Fields is their guy. I think he will do good things there. He looks like he will. He looks like he's progressed, but he's progressing slowly. And you need someone there that's going to take the Bears and Fields forwards. And yeah, I believe that's not Matt Nagy. I think they need to replace him. And get some new blood in there and move the franchise forward as a whole, like some of the other teams have done, where they brought in new coaches and rookie quarterbacks, which we'll talk about in a minute. So yeah, I'm in full agreement with you with it. They just don't seem to know. They've lost their identity since that 12-4 season. So they need someone to come in and really cement who the Bears are.
Yeah, I think they hoped that Nagy obviously would kick on with from the 12-4. Obviously, that's what they thought would happen, and it just, for whatever reason, it hasn't really worked. And as you said, they've got some really good defensive players there, and it's like they traded for Khalil Mack, and it kind of feels like they're wasting him a little bit because he's on a team that's not doing anything. And as I said, I joke around and stuff like that. Hopefully they'll keep him and all that, and they'll continue to be rubbish. But it's like, from an NFL fan's point of view, you want to see everybody competitive and stuff like that. And it just kind of feels like that they desperately need to make some changes there. And the other thing is, and unfortunately, I said it last week when Freddie was talking about the Vikings, there is this potential now which has become a stronger thing when it comes to Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. If he's not going to be there, the Packers will be weaker. It's just, it is what it is. And this is going to be these teams' opportunities to sort of come in and do something. Now, they've got the quarterback, but it kind of feels like they need to change the coach. And it's weird. It just feels like maybe after a couple of 8-8 seasons with it not really working, that might have been the time to make the move and go, right, fresh quarterback, fresh coach, let's go for it. And it just feels like it's not happened.
Yeah, they're a big city as well, where sport is a massive thing. I've been over to Chicago. I've stayed there. It's an amazing place. Recommend it to anyone. And there are other teams as well: the Bulls, the Blackhawks, the Cubs, the White Sox. They are a massive sporting city. So they need to make changes because people will want that to continue in the football to be a big name as well. So yeah, I fully agree. I'm going to go through the AFC teams with you, all the teams that are less than 500, and we'll discuss whether they should trust the process with who they've got in, or whether you think it's time to move on. So my first one I'm going to go with is the Miami Dolphins, 4-7. Brian Flores. He's on a 3-game winning streak. They've got 8 picks in the 2022 draft. They've got a lot of young players on that team, and they've got the fourth most cap space next year. Do you think it's time to trust process or move on?
I think with Brian Flores, I think it's trust the process. He did very well last year with a very, very young team. It hasn't quite happened this year, but they've had a tougher schedule because of how well they did last year. I actually think that they could really make a difference, and they keep on talking about going for Deshaun Watson. I mean, that would be a massive difference to them. The defense, actually, as we've seen in the last couple of games, has looked okay. It was really good last year. It seems to have struggled a bit this year, but it's looked okay. It wouldn't surprise me if the Dolphins almost, I know you can't be 8-8 anymore, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were around that sort of 8-9, 7-10 kind of mark by the end of it. Yeah, I think Flores has shown that he's a good coach, and that they kind of, to me, it kind of feels like they've put all their eggs in the basket of the draft picks. So it would be very odd to get rid of to have a brand new coach with all these new draft picks could be potentially quite unstable, and I would have thought for the team. So yeah, I'd stick with him.
Yeah, I think it's trust the process with him as well. Like I said, I think that what they need to do, I think the 2 seasons is good, and I think them having a bit of a dip isn't overly a bad thing. It then highlights to them what they need to address in the third year of this, because they did so well and haven't made the next step. You know, they have had quarterback injuries and things like that. But it kind of now highlights what did we do right, what did we do wrong, and they have, like I said, they've got the draft picks and they've got the cap space to bring in free agency if they want to bring in some veteran players. Like I know Freddie, when we spoke about on the main show in previous weeks, that he thought them losing like Kyle Van Noy and people like that was a massive hindrance to why they've not done so well this year. So maybe they can address that. And yeah, I think Brian Flores is going to do well there, and that's going to be a tough division next year, I think. The next team up is still in their division, is the Jets, 2-8. Robert Saleh. They have the youngest roster in the league. They've been injury plagued with some of their big names. Yeah, is it trust the process, or do you think they made an error here?
Again, I think that Saleh has shown when he was at San Francisco how good of a defensive coach that he is. And I feel like you have to give him time because, as you said, there's been a lot of injuries. They're very young. It's one of these things that's going to take time. They're going to have a very high draft pick. So, you know, that's a positive for them as well. Yeah, I think obviously when it comes to Zach Wilson as well, it kind of feels like there's a little bit of the same question when it comes to him, whether you trust the process with him. But I think you have to with both of them. I think they have to sort of see how it goes because they are both brand new coach and quarterback, and you know it's going to take time for these things to happen and these things to gel. So I think you do have to trust the process with them. Whether it works is a bit of another thing, but I think they've probably put themselves in a position where they have to trust it.
Yeah, I'm in agreement here. I think he's quality and he brings a bit of passion, which you like to see from a head coach. You don't like those head coaches that sort of just look a bit glum on the side when things aren't going great. As I said, youngest roster in the league currently, so that's something to build with. New York have fallen, or the Jets have fallen into previous years of wanting a quick fix every year, and it's just not happened. And I think, like I said, Robert Saleh, young team, rookie quarterback. I'm not sold on him, but you know, I'm hoping he proves me wrong. I think that they need to say this is a long-term plan, unlike the Dolphins that we've just spoke about, where they've had a dip in form and we expected them to do better. I don't think we ever expected the Jets to win more than probably what they already have. I don't think we overly expected them to be better than 2-8 at this point in the season anyway. Anything more than that, I'd say, was a bonus. So,
I think the idea of them coming out of this season with 4 or 5 wins, it's the same as what the Bengals were, wasn't it, last year? And then look at what the Bengals did. So I'm not saying that Zach Wilson is Joe Burrow, but there is the potential that that sort of thing could happen. I mean, so yeah, I think, like you say, everything you say is right, and they need to stick with it.
Yeah. Next up, Texans 2-8. David Culley. They've got 9 picks next year. I feel like they had a very poor 2021 draft. So do we trust him with 9 picks in the 2022 draft?
Who knows, really, with the Texans? I mean, I kind of feel sorry for this guy. I mean, I know that he knew what he was getting himself into and all that sort of thing, but it's this is all further up that is the problem when it comes to the Texans. So I don't know. I mean, you'd argue that he's probably done the best that he could with the roster that he's got there. Nothing's going to change there until Deshaun Watson goes. That's where it's at now. So until that is sorted out and he's gone, you just feel like nothing's going to change. Yeah, I mean, you might as well keep him, because at least he'll have had the experience of the year with the team. And there's going to be certain guys there that are only on short-term contracts that will probably be on short-term contracts again next year. I don't see anything really changing with the Texans in the next 2 or 3 years, to be honest, because they need to make some big drastic changes there in order to do it. And I think it's going to take a lot of time. He hasn't really shown why he should be a head coach but at the same time, given everything that he's got around him, you can't really blame him too much either. So don't know, to be confirmed on that one.
I think he will be majorly on the hot seat. I think they were hoping for more from him and a bit more. I don't know if you've watched any of his press conferences or seen it.
It's not great, is it?
It's not head coach material, is it? No. It's interim. It's very much like you've sacked your head coach and this guy's come in and just kind of going like, I'm keeping the ship afloat just about. I'm trying my best. I just don't think, I think even if you knew you were going to have a bad season, it'd be nice to have a head coach go, no, this is my team. I've developed some structure. There's got to be a game plan, even if you plan not to win a game all year. There's got to be, we chose not to win all year, but we chose to be better in the locker room. We chose to be better on the practice field. We've installed a mentality where, there's team spirit and see that develop. I don't think we've seen that from the Texans, which means I don't think you're going to move forward with that. And like I said, I think they drafted very poorly in 2021. So I think you could get someone in, even if it's for short term, maybe just go, we need someone in that knows what they're doing, that's a veteran for 2 years, just to maybe solidify the basics, really.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that makes sense. The only thing I would say is it kind of feels like that was what they did by bringing him in. This is the thing. He kind of was the veteran who's been around the NFL for a long time. Not a head coach, but he has been around the NFL for a long time. I don't know if a lot of it's his fault, to be honest. That's the thing. I don't know. You're probably right. Really, what they really need to do is to have a complete fresh approach to it. But as I said, I just don't think it's going to happen until Deshaun Watson's gone. So
yeah, well, I don't think he'll be there next year, so I don't think it'll all be sorted. So we move on to the last team in the AFC, which is the Jacksonville Jaguars with Urban Meyer, 2-8. They've got 13 picks next year.
I mean, again, I don't know. It kind of, there's been a lot of chat, hasn't there, with Urban Meyer, them saying that they're going to change the coaching staff, that maybe not all of them, but some of them, it hasn't really worked with Trevor Lawrence. He hasn't developed how they hoped, was something that came out. So they're talking about changing the coaching staff because of that. So I think because of all them things, everything that happened with Urban Meyer earlier in the season, it all kind of makes you feel like they're probably going to make a change. Whether they should or not, I don't know. It's really difficult when it's a team like this that you're talking about. They're never going to win a lot of games. It's like I said about the Bengals last year. It was so poor. They were the number one pick, and in that first season, I think they won five. Was it maybe 4 or 5? Can't remember. And that's probably the most that you can expect. You probably can't really expect them to do amazingly well, and then you progress afterwards. A lot of people were saying the same about Zach Taylor, that it wasn't really working. But then now you look at this season and we're all going, actually, you can see that something is starting to happen there. So I don't know. I think they probably will get rid of Meyer just because of all the other stuff as well. But I don't know if I don't think they probably should. I think he's probably shown in all of his time at college that he's a capable coach and that he deserves a proper chance. But unfortunately, I don't think the Jags are going to give it to him because of some of the other stuff as well. It's just another reason to get rid, isn't it? So
I really like Urban Meyer. When the Jacksonville Jaguars, as you said, they've never really solidified themselves as a team that to be taken overly seriously any year. And even in their city, I mean, one of our friends is families from Jacksonville. They're more of a college team, as in like the people who live around there follow the college teams more, which takes a lot away from like the Chargers have got. No one wants to go and see the Chargers. They've got more away fans going to the games than they have home fans. And I think you've had that a lot with Jacksonville Jaguars. There was talk of them even just moving them over to us. And I think Urban Meyer brings a little bit of like, oh, what are the Jags doing? And people then start talking about them and then they're relevant. And I think Urban Meyer makes the Jags relevant in the NFL. I just feel like he's surrounded himself with very, very poor coaching staff. Darrell Bevel as the offensive coordinator and Joe Cullen as the defensive coordinator. I just don't think he's surrounded himself with a team of people to support him when this is your first time round in the NFL doing it properly. I would stick with him. I think Trevor Lawrence will be fantastic. We've seen, I think you did some stats previously for us, and not last show, the show before, with rookie quarterbacks that turned into superstars and how poor they were, and when we did the Jordan Love episode. So there's definitely positives with Trevor Lawrence. They've had injuries as well, and they've got some good young defensive players. And like I said, 13 picks next year. They can really rebuild here. And I like Urban Meyer there. I thought they drafted well last year with the players they picked up. And I said that college connection is quite good. I know they've had the firing of Dan Mullen from the Florida Gators. I know he's real close with Urban Meyer. So I don't know whether there'll be a phone call. I haven't read any news or anything like that, but I don't know whether there'll be a phone call to him to see if he wants to come on board as the offensive coordinator with him, like he was at he replaced him at Florida. So I don't know whether there'll be a chat there, but that might be interesting. Again, makes us talk about the Jags. And I think if we're talking about them, that's a plus side for them until they get this team right. So
yeah, I mean the defense has improved. It's been better than what I think a lot of us thought it was going to be. So that is definitely something that they've got going for them. And like you say, with all them picks, it does mean that they can sort of maybe concentrate more specific areas this time rather than a broader sort of like just everywhere. So that's not a bad thing. And maybe that could well be Meyer that's done that. That's got that better defensive solidity there. So it's entirely possible that that's come through him. I don't know. It's like you kind of get the feeling with the owner of the Jags that he's not necessarily a particularly patient man, and so that's what makes you wonder whether something might happen. I think he should get another year at least. Myself, I think he deserves it, and that he just if for no other reason, purely because you have to give these guys time. You just can't expect it to happen in 1 year, but who knows? So, but hopefully he sticks around.
So we're on stick. We're on.
Yeah.
Okay, so we move to the NFC, and we'll start with the Washington football team, 4-6. Ron Rivera. I didn't make any other notes on that other than defense hasn't been as good because
Yeah.
I'll hand it over to you, but I've got no issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ron Rivera has shown over the years how good a coach he is. Look, the defense hasn't quite worked out, but there's no reason why it can, come back to how it was last year and do just as well. Desperately in need of a quarterback, desperately. Taylor Heineke has shown that he is capable, but not to win multiple games in a season. And certainly not to push on to the playoffs. And Fitzpatrick, it's not exactly for the future, is it? So yeah, I mean they just desperately need a quarterback. But yeah, I would keep Rivera.
Yeah, they've got some really good pieces, but I think no one doesn't like that defense. I think I said maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago that it's that young. I think the eldest defensive player they had was 26, and a lot of them were rookies or second years. And I always think it takes you 3 years to actually find your feet properly. So I think they'll all find their feet and find who the leader is. And Ron Rivera is definitely the guy to lead that defense into being the best defense in the NFL, which it could be. He's definitely the guy. So yeah, I agree. They've got some nice pieces on the offense, nice young pieces, McLaurin, Gibson. So yeah, finding that quarterback. Like I said, I didn't make too many notes on the Washington team because I felt like he's the right guy for the job there. Still in the same division, it's the New York Giants, 3-7. Joe Judge. They've been injury plagued. They've had Jason Garrett basically running the offense. They've got 11 draft picks next year. 2 of them will be first-round picks. What are you saying?
When it comes to Judge, I don't really know much about his college. Was it college coaching?
He was the special teams coach at the Patriots, wasn't he?
Right. Is that where he's come through? He hasn't come through as college. Okay. So it was a bit of a strange appointment, wasn't it? I think everyone was a bit surprised by it. And it's kind of felt like what they've done is they've tried to bring in more experienced heads around, and it hasn't really worked. When it comes to the Giants, I kind of, to a certain degree, I feel sorry for them because they have been injury plagued this year, and they were last year. But you've got to start questioning, why is that happening? That's a bit strange that is just constantly happening all the time. Yeah, I feel like with Judge, I do feel like he's a little bit out of his depth, and that they probably could do with someone with a little bit more experience there. I also maybe feel that the way forward is to, I don't know, it's really difficult because, like I say, you can't make excuses for it because of the injuries, and it just, I mean, if you're going to lose your number 1 running back, your number 1 wide receiver, your number 2 wide receiver, your tight end's always injury prone anyway. I mean, how do you win games? You can't. So I kind of feel like it's not really his fault, but at the same time, I kind of feel like he's not necessarily the guy to lead you further on. But I think there's more problems upstairs, like maybe Dave Gettleman. I think it's probably time for him to move on and bring someone new in, and maybe a fresh general manager might help, but then a new general manager would probably want their own guy. So it's a really difficult one. I'd probably keep him, give it another year, see how he does. This is only his second, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'd probably give him another year, see how he goes. But I do feel like he's probably, definitely on the hot seat if it starts going wrong next year.
Yeah, I think he saved his job by sacking Jason Garrett.
Yeah.
I think if he'd have kept him, there would have been uproar with the media and with the fans that this can't go anywhere. I've watched as many as the live games as I can on telly of the Giants, and I agree with what you're saying, that he's a bit out of his depth, because I've seen him make some very poor, not poor, some very odd calls. I've seen him throw a red flag within the last 2 minutes, which obviously is a foul, which is very, it's very rookie head coach thing to do. I don't necessarily think that's results in him being a bad head coach. I just think that is experience. He has come from the school of Belichick. He was the special teams head coach there, so he knows how to run an organization. Whether it's just been the case that they've gone, you've not been a head coach or a coordinator of offense or defense, then we're gonna I put my big note in here was Dave Gettleman. I put big line under it, and I just don't know whether he's let Joe Judge be Joe Judge and be it Joe Judge's New York Giants. I feel like Jason Garrett had too much to say and too much of the running of the team, almost like he was the head coach but without the title. Which, if you saw them play, the decisions of uninspiring, just running the ball nowhere. Yeah, that's a different story. Like I said, they've got 11 draft picks next year. 2 of them are first round. I think he definitely, let's see how it goes now. They've made some changes, but I think he definitely needs another year. I agree. I don't think David Gettleman's right there. I think he will be the next to go. I think he should go before Joe Judge. I think Joe Judge deserves a chance. And like I said, we have been plagued with injuries. It's not, I say this every year, it sounds like an excuse now, but yeah, I'm up for sticking with him. I never thought he was the right person for the job, but I'm happy to stick with him as a supporter of the team. So I'm going to trust the process with this one, and fingers crossed we can get something out of it, and maybe just look a bit more inspiring and a bit more like a football team. So my next one up is the Seattle Seahawks, 3-7, Pete Carroll.
Yeah, you're going to keep him, aren't you? You ain't going to get rid of Pete Carroll. He's been there forever.
I mean, I would. This is where we differ. I love Pete Carroll, and I think he's been superb in the NFL. I think he's been absolutely fantastic. He was fantastic in college. He revolutionized USC. He changed college football, the way we look at it. And he's done great things in Seattle. But he's starting to look a bit outdated. His old tactics, stuck in the past. He has had injuries in that team. But for me, I feel like Russell Wilson has carried this team for the last 5 years, maybe. And they were well known. Freddie will tell you about this. It's a shame he's not on the show this time, because I've brought him up 3 times now. When he first started watching NFL, the Seattle defense was incredible. It's why he's got a big soft spot for them. It's why he always talks about them. They were incredible. And Pete Carroll was given a lot of props for that. But then when they all started to leave, that defense has not looked good since. And how many years are we going back now?
Probably about 6 or 7.
Yeah, if not more. And when you look at each year, he's given more and more involvement in the franchise and the organization. And, they're giving him a bit more of it's his franchise. And I don't feel like they've had a good draft in the last five years. I don't think they've drafted well for 5 years. I think they've only really had one hit, and that's DK Metcalf. I don't think they've had. Could you name any other player that they've drafted?
Not really. I mean, I do agree that it's not been great, and it does kind of feel like it's only going one way a lot of the time as well, and it's not a good way. I think that maybe you could argue that it is the right time to go, and that he's been there for a very long time, and they need a fresh set of eyes at it, and all of that. I can't see a guy like him being chucked out. I just can't see it. I think they'll just keep it going, and it's like I mean, we're both Arsenal fans, so we have history of this when it comes to Wenger. I just can't see it happening.
Do you
It's
think
one of
there's
them.
do you think there's going to be an air of he's never won without Russell Wilson? Russell Wilson, there's a lot of people saying he's not going to be there next year. Do you think there's an air of him then going, maybe I shouldn't be there either, and him stepping away?
No, because I think he will come out and go, I can do it. I think he will just have complete belief in himself that it doesn't matter, I can still do it. It's irrelevant, despite the fact of his age, despite the fact that his ideas might be considered slightly outdated. I think he'll be like, so what? I'll do it with another one.
Especially
Because
in the division that he's in and the head coaches that
yeah,
are in.
I mean, it's really tough, isn't it, in that division? No, I think he will want to carry on, and I can't remember how long the contract is. I can't remember when it runs out. I know he signed a new one last year, I think it was. Yeah, I think he'll carry on to the end of that contract, and I don't know, maybe they'll get rid of him, but I don't think they'll get rid of him this quickly.
I think it's time to move on, and I really like Pete Carroll. We spoke about the Bears, so we'll brush over them, and we'll move to the Detroit Lions at 0-9-1 with Dan Campbell.
Yeah, I mean, again, they basically got rid of anyone any good, didn't they, last year? So it's a complete rebuild. I feel like it's a pretty easy one. You kind of got to stick with him. You can't really do anything else with it. It's a complete rebuild, and they need to probably bring in a young quarterback that they like the look of, his man, rather than having Jared Goff there. And yeah, I think you're just going to have to. It's going to take a long time for them, but I think they're just going to have to go through it, and that's probably why they gave him such a long contract.
Yeah, I didn't make any notes with the Lions. It's another one I kind of just went, you know what? I think he's entertaining. I quite like him. I've seen flashes of a decent football from the Lions. I think they've been unlucky in a lot of games as well, but I think 0 wins is a bit unlucky for them. They have looked trash in a few of them, but I'm quite happy for him to be there. I quite like him, so I think.
Yeah, I'm quite happy for it to carry on. You keep on losing.
Yeah.
That's fine with me.
Let him try. We all knew that this was going to happen for them this year, so yeah. Unlike like the Texans, I think this is a guy that can create a bit of a culture there. Like I said, we see him in the media all the time and stuff like that. So he's just a bit more of a, this is my team and I'm the guy and I'm the face. So, it kind of works for me there. So we move on to our last team before we go on to our next topic. It's the Atlanta Falcons at 4-6 with Arthur Smith.
Yeah, I mean, it's another one, isn't it? It's in his first year, so you got to give him time, really. I think it's quite a, it's a common thing, really. A lot of these guys are in their first year. You got to give him time. I think the offense actually has looked okay in certain games, especially when Calvin Ridley was out there. To lose someone like that's massive.
Yeah.
The defense, it hasn't really improved that much compared to what it was under Dan Quinn, but it's improved a little bit. I think it's another one. You just got to give him another year and hopefully it'll work out. But you do worry a little bit with Matt Ryan, whether it's kind of starting to wane off a little bit and come towards the end, maybe. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's a difficult one. But I think you'll keep him for another year.
Yeah, I didn't make too many notes. They've got 7 draft picks next year. I think he's been a bit unlucky as well in a lot of those games. They're just struggling for consistency for me because they 1 week they look good, the next week they don't at all. So there's definitely something to build there for me. There's definitely a year 2 for me in that team. I don't just see them going nowhere, and I don't feel like it's a stalemate. Like I said with the Dolphins, I feel like with this team, you can kind of go, this is where we went wrong. And I feel like he might be a guy to go, this is how we make it better. So, because you can see that week in, week out with the way he plays his games. So I think you'll see that in the franchise going forward. So yeah, I'd continue to stick with him. Just talking about, as he got brought up there, Dan Quinn, do you think he'll be a head coach next year?
I kind of hope he doesn't. I think he's kind of got himself in a position where it's sort of working. Um, I felt like with the Falcons, it just progressively got worse after the Super Bowl loss, and it just didn't really work out. He might be one of them guys that's really really good as a defensive coordinator, and just not great as to try and control everything. I think that's where it kind of went wrong a bit. He's done well with that Cowboys defense, and
Really well.
he needs to kind of stick with it. I think for for his own health, probably.
No, I mean we had a guy at the Giants, Steve Spagnuolo, who revolutionized our defense, and then when he went off to go and be a head coach, he was terrible, and now he's back being a defensive coordinator, and he's great again. So some people are just meant to be offensive and defensive coordinators, aren't they? So we had a brief conversation during the week. You released a video as well for our next topic, I believe.
Yeah, so I put it out. I think it was last Friday. I think I put it out. There was a report that came out about NFL expansion and about how they're looking at, making the league bigger, because realistically, they're always looking for new ways to make it bigger, make more money, because that's all that matters at the end of the day, is making more money. And essentially what it was that there's only so many games more they can increase it. There's going to reach a point where you can't go anymore. There's probably a strong case that they might end up going to 18 and 2 preseason, so that's something that might happen, but you can't really go much further than that. So in order to expand the NFL, the idea that is to bring in new teams and make it bigger. And I think it was Mike Florio from Pro Football Network who basically came out and said that the discussions are already happening at the top table of the NFL, where they're coming out and they're saying that eventually they want the NFL to be 40 teams. Like that is something that they want to happen. It's not something that's going to happen anytime soon. It's going to take a long time to get there, but it will happen because the money is there. And with all the new laws coming out in America regarding betting, it completely blows it up for more sponsorship, and it's going to be like the Wild West out there when it comes to that sort of thing. So the NFL are like, we want a piece of it, and it's the only way they can expand is to increase the teams. There's no real sort of like ideas of where teams are going to go, as in how many in a division, or the idea in the long run, I believe, is, or their hope is 5 teams, 8 divisions. That's the hope. But the 14 or 4 places that have been mentioned was St. Louis, which obviously today has just they've settled their lawsuit regarding the Rams leaving. San Antonio, Toronto, and London. Now there's it's on Wikipedia, so you can't trust it 100%. But the NFL have previously come out and said that the hope is that there will be a franchise in London by 2025. So that's kind of where we're at with it, and it feels like it's the only way they can get bigger, and it's kind of coinciding with the betting laws changing and the ability to make more money. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I put a video out and had quite a bit of comeback from fans, especially in the UK. We had quite a few UK fans that wanted to talk about it. It was a pretty mixed reaction, to be honest. There were some people that were like, yes, great, would love a franchise here, it means there's 8 games we can go to. There was others that like, how the hell are we going to pay for it, was one of them. And just generally like, yeah, but it's all right as it is now. That we like the fact that we could get multiple different teams come over, and you have, say, like 2 or 3 games, and that actually the idea of having a whole 8 games there is not necessarily what a lot of people want. They want it kind of like, I think think a lot of people like the idea of three. You know, that's not a bad thing. So yeah, it was a bit of an interesting one. Got quite a few people commenting on it, and I think personally, I think it's going to happen because the money will make it happen because that's how business works, basically. So it will happen. Um, but myself, I would rather it didn't. I quite like it as it is. I think we can have more games. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't be against having, say, like 4 or 5 games. Um, but I don't know if you're going to get enough people to sit, as in like to pay for it, to sit in that stadium 8 games a season. It's going to be a lot of money. Don't know.
How does the logistics work of them adding franchises? For me, I know when we spoke about it, I thought 4 is not enough. I think it's got to be 8 straight off the bat, so everybody's got a fair league. I think some leagues with 5 and some with 4 is a little bit unfair. And if you start a new franchise up, do they just get a salary cap of 200 and whatever million it is, and then go spend it how you want? Can they just go like, all right, we'll have Tom Brady, we'll give him 100 million, whatever? Or do they have to take the free agents? You know, where do they go in the draft? How do you
Yeah,
get 53 men?
they're all great questions, and no one knows. Nothing's really come out from it.
Yeah.
It's literally as it is as literal as they are talking about it, and it will happen because we want the money, and
Yeah.
there just isn't any other detail.
They say they want the money for it, and the NFL talking about that, but they've moved franchises around from different cities because teams weren't followed enough, the capacity for the stadiums wasn't enough, and things like that. We've already spoke earlier that Jacksonville don't have a great following. We also mentioned that the Chargers, there's more away fans at their home games than there is home fans. You know, they struggled in San Diego as well. Like, if you add more teams, especially a London team, would you become a fan of the London team, or would you still be supporting the Packers? Do you want to spend all your money filling that stadium?
And yeah, so this is kind of part of the argument that came up when I put the video out, that I said it's like, just because a London franchise happens doesn't mean I'm suddenly going to become the fan of, I don't know, whatever you're going to call the London franchise. No, I'm still going to be a Packers fan. Freddie's still going to be a Steelers fan. You're still going to be a Giants fan. It's like, and this is the problem. This is where it becomes difficult. Now, we might all kind of have them as a second team and one that we kind of, we follow and we just sort of see how they're doing. But are you going to spend all of that money like going to them games and doing it? And this is the thing. I just don't see it happening. Now, are you going to go, say, London franchise ends up playing the Green Bay Packers? Yes, I will go. But that doesn't mean that I go to London franchise playing against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and this is where the problem comes in. So it's difficult to have this kind of history that they've now created with the London games and then suddenly go, yeah, but you don't want to know about that. What we want to do is we want to actually have a team there and you're all going to support them. And I don't think that they've quite thought that that's going to happen. And I kind of mentioned as well, like, so Toronto's another one. And I was a little bit like, yeah, but they've got their own football league in Canada. It's like, so are these guys suddenly going to stop supporting these teams? And, now we might follow it and we might take interest in it and, we'll probably talk about it and stuff like that. But it doesn't mean that you're suddenly going to go, no, that's it. I'm going to be a fan of the London team now. So it's a very difficult one. I think they just see an opportunity, and the one thing that they have come out and said is it's not necessarily about filling massive stadiums. It's about, or like, not, when I say massive, I mean like they don't all have to be Wembley sized stadiums sort of thing. If they can get like a 40,000, 50,000 seat stadium and everyone's watching and it's full up, then it's fine. They probably don't care that the Chargers aren't that well supported, because the Steelers fans went. It doesn't matter, as long as it doesn't matter who's in there, as long as it's sold. So I think that's probably their argument. And that's why they see other European countries, like people from them countries, coming over to the London games. So they're probably like, oh, well, they'll come over for that. They won't come to every game, but they'll come over for one game, or they'll come over 2 games. But it doesn't matter, as long as they don't all turn up for one game and then no one. As long as it's all sort of like spread out, which is what it is at the moment, isn't it? You know, you find that happens. So yeah, I mean, I think that's all it is. I like the way it is at the moment. I'm going to sound like a grouchy old person who doesn't want any sort of like progress, as they like to call it, and all that. But yeah, I think it should stay as it is. I do think we could have more games. I wouldn't be against having 4 or 5, like I said. I think that would be a nice amount for us. And I wouldn't be against them being sort of more like spread out in the season a bit more. That's the other thing.
Makes it better financially.
Yes, it does, but it's just also, I think you might end up seeing a slightly more important game as well.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be against that. But the idea of having a permanent franchise here, I do worry that it might not work. And then the worry with that is that if it doesn't work, that they pull out altogether.
Yeah, I'm a no for it. Now, a lot of the topics that we brought up, mainly in that conversation and prior to that, lead me to a little thing that I've got 10 minutes to quickly chat about. I know we've ranted on quite long already. That was the fact that this week the USFL was announced. The teams were announced. Now, that is going to be a spring league running from April 2022. Fox Sports own it and pumped a load of money into it. So you've already got your TV station. They're spreading it between all the other channels as well, but they're going to be the main one. It's a 10-week season with 2 playoff games at the end of it. Now, I think this might work. There's nothing. We spoke about this. There is nothing after the season ends till, the season starts. So spring football, I think, has a chance to work. The XFL outsold TV viewings, the hockey and stuff like that. So there's definitely a space for it. And a lot of the percentage of college players go undrafted. The likes of JC Jackson at the Patriots, who's one of the best cornerbacks in the league right now, was undrafted. There is talent out there that's undrafted. PJ Walker went and played in the XFL, and he's now come through to the NFL. There's second chances there. So I think this could work. And like you said, this betting is going to be a thing. So I would bet on this during the offseason. Would you?
You'd bet on anything. So.
Yeah.
So how much was it? 10 teams?
8 teams, 10 weeks, 2 playoffs.
So okay. So in a way, is this kind of almost a little bit of an experiment to see, because you've got 8 teams and that's kind of the idea.
Possibly. And they've said they're gonna use it as well, similar. It's gonna be NFL rules, but I think they're gonna try the new rules. Every year there's like 10, 15 rules that like get amended or changed. I think they're going to trial them in this as well. It's not. I don't think it's affiliated directly with the NFL like the XFL was disbanded, coming back in 23 maybe. But it's definitely a good platform for it. It's a good chance for players to get a second chance. So briefly, I was just going to quickly go through. We've got the North and the South. We'll go through the teams with you, and then maybe later you can make us a nice video of who you're going to support, guys, because I'm going to start watching this. I mean, I started watching the Alliance League and started watching XFL, so I will support someone. So this year in the North, you've got the Michigan Panthers, the New Jersey Generals, which these used to be teams prior. Donald Trump used to own the New Jersey Generals back in the olden days when it used to be a thing.
What was it? The New Jersey Generals?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Philadelphia Stars.
Right. Okay.
Pittsburgh Maulers. The Birmingham Stallions.
Okay.
The Houston Gamblers.
Wow. I mean, that's mine, isn't it?
The New Orleans Breakers and the Tampa Bay Bandits.
It sounds a bit like the XFL, doesn't it?
These are all original names. They had a legal battle, I think, trying to get the rights to these teams, because I think the UCFL was a thing back in the 80s. I don't know.
Right. I mean, well, it's got to be the Houston Gamblers, isn't it? I mean, come on. So, but yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what happens. And like you say, if it's, I think the problem that anything has found when the NFL finishes, because of the standard of the NFL, it's the next, being able to compete with that. And I know it's not about competing with the NFL in this circumstance, but the worry, I suppose, is that people are going to watch it and then they're going to be like, yeah, this isn't as good as the NFL, so I'm not going to watch it. And that's, I suppose, that's the problem for it. But there is a space for it. And we mentioned about the XFL, and it kind of does feel like they're sort of nicking their space before the XFL can get up and going. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
It'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. So I thought we'd bring it. And like I said, it'll give us something to chat about when it rocks around to April. So, we won't be clutching at straws and getting anyone on that wants to talk about American football. So, well, we've overrun probably slightly more than what we want, but that was ever expected when it's me and you. So we'll probably tie it up there. But thanks for joining us, guys. As always, the fantasy show will be running live. Oh, will it? It's Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Friday, isn't it?
We're doing it. We will fit that in. Hope everybody has a nice Thanksgiving tomorrow. Hopefully you're all watching the games. Hopefully you're all having loads of turkey and pumpkin sewing, whatever. What do we have? Pumpkin pie? I don't know. Enjoy yourself. I'll be getting together with some of the lads. So hopefully everybody else is enjoying that. And we'll be back for the preview show on Sunday as well. But till then, thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.